Nick, would you like to test your clicker?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so it's just a diamond. Perfect. Alrighty. Hello, my name is Dinu. I will be your timekeeper for the day. Before we continue, I would like just to confirm that this is Team 8.
Yes.
Perfect. I will show you warning signs that are going to be 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and 30 seconds remaining. Once the 10-second countdown has come up, I will say stop, after which the team must stop talking immediately. Afterwards, there will be a 10-minute Q&A session period that will follow. I would like to remind you that all teams must present for a minimum of 15 minutes, and all team members must speak during the presentation, but not necessarily during the Q&A period. Audience members, we ask that you please place your phones on silent mode, remain seated in the room for the duration of the full presentation and Q&A period. I will now let the judges introduce themselves. Once they are done, you may begin your presentation and the timer will start. Judges?
I'm Teresa Malawani, Vice President, Head of Wealth Planning and Tax Consulting at Raymond James.
I'm Jennifer Rachel. I'm the Senior Change Management Consultant at Raymond James.
Hi, George Renaud, Senior Director, Commercial Division, Ramatage du Quartier.
Everyone, my name is Laurence Marcolani. I'm the Marketing Manager for Brookside in Canada.
You may start when you say your first word.
Time is the biggest currency you can buy. In today's digital world, speed is valued, and accuracy and transparency are appreciated. We believe Nesto Cloud has both. Today at Avon Consulting, me, Vashali, my colleague Haza, Jane, and Chloe are going to tell you how Nesto Cloud is going to become a leading provider when it comes to digital lending platforms. So the question that Nesto Cloud is faced with today is, how can you serve as in an ecosystem that is going on with platform challenges and provide a strategy which not only has B2B stream, but also has a post-sale servicing plan and create an interactive platform and an internal structure. We identified two main issues: data privacy pressures and increasing industry competitiveness. And we believe our three-pillar strategy will tackle your issues today. First, establish secured internal structure. Second, execute a 3-tiered B2B sales plan. And third, implement post-sales change management consulting program. The impact that these are going to create will be massive, with an EBITDA of over $20 million.
So I'll walk you through the agenda we'll have for today, starting off the analysis to know what the company's strengths and weaknesses and also the opportunities and risks that they might have. That led us to the recommendations and how these strategies be implemented within the implementation part, and follow up with the risks and mitigations at the end. Starting off with the analysis. To understand your company current position, we're seeing that it is a leading digital transformation trend, which making us having a really good advantage of reducing our operational cost and enhance the customer experience and increasing our customer retentions and acquisitions rate. Moving on to the weaknesses, we're seeing that customer trust is a challenge for us because they find it hard to switch between the platforms, and the concerns of data management process is also another key for us to win through. And for the external side, we're seeing that we're in a really good advantage from the as a fintech for Canadian mortgage industry, and that makes us to outperform traditional lenders. Moving to the threats, we're seeing that there's going to be some regulatory volatility, and the rapid increase of competitiveness within the industry can be something that we need to carefully measure.
Now, we know that the market you're in is changing fast-paced. It's changing every day. So we did market analysis for you to understand where we stand. First, let's look at traditional banks, which consists of over 65% of all mortgage originations from 2025. But they have pursue aggressive acquisition strategies which require faster systems. Second, when we look at credit unions and big players like Desjardins or Vancity, they have 18% of all mortgage originations from 2025. but they're increasingly successful, but they are typically in regional areas and only provide to specific providers. Now, when we look at alternative lenders, they have 9% mortgage originations from 2025, but their approach is very non-traditional. Moving forward.
Now, when we looked at your market analysis, we wanted to ensure we made a solution that would cater to everything that is going to make your company successful. We curated 4 separate alternatives and weighted them based on the factors of ease of entry to market, strategic fit, operational and financial feasibility, as well as scalability and speed. So the first strategy that we looked at was doing a Big 6 bank focus, targeting that 65% of mortgage origination. We found that this was effective in strategic fit and operational and financial feasibility. However, the ease of market as well as scalability and speed was persistently difficult. Moving on to our second strategy, a credit union focus. Here we had an easy entry to the market, however, it was more difficult in that area of scalability and speed again. Finally, we looked at curating an off-the-shelf solution similar to something like Microsoft Office Suite, where a business purchases this and it's tailored to all their needs without the customization. So this had an ease of entry to market score of 4, which was a lot higher than a big bank focus, and as well was a lot more feasible for us operationally and financially. Now finally, we looked at a mixed tier offering, and we found that this was the most feasible in terms of, was the best strategic fit and as well as financially and operationally feasible with a high scalability and speed. Now we wanted to address the core questions today in our recommendation. So we're looking at internal structure. How can Nesto Cloud adopt and secure a trustworthy internal structure with defined roles and responsibility? We're not just looking at offering a product here, we're looking at building a company. Second, B2B sales. How can Nesto Cloud leverage B2B sales to achieve scalable and sustainable growth while addressing the challenges of selling a lending platform? And finally, we wanted to look at post-sales servicing. How can Nesto Cloud provide post-sales servicing to ensure successful adoption and effective change management for their clients? With that, we have our recommendation.
So to cater to these 3 questions, we're bringing 3 pillars recommendation. We firstly want to start to establishing a secure internal structure. Secondly, we want to execute a 3-tier sales plan. And finally, we want to implement the post-sales change management consulting. Starting off with the first recommendation. To be able to establish a secure internal structure, we want to make sure that the financial, the infrastructures of the companies and the human factors of it has been effectively monitored. So so in the 3 branches here, we want to monitor the front office operations or the client delivery, where we want to tier it into 3 types. Off-the-shelf system, where it's minimal of customizations to our clients. Mid-sized partners, where we have some partial customizations with our partners. And lastly, established or big partners who we have to fully integrate it and follow with them in a really long time. And the back office on your right is how for us to data integrations team and statement reporting teams, as well as the data reconciliations team. And to structure all of them, we need technology governance and middle office operations, where they look over the infrastructure modernizations, the fraud operations, as well as the communications within the clients and internal communications operations. All of these 3 pillars can make us having a really well-structured, where they can cross-check to make sure everything is operationally working well together.
Now that the company has established a secure internal structure, let's move on to the B2B sales package, the second pillar of our strategy. We are looking at a comprehensive offering that targets all sectors of the market. So, we're first offering a bronze Nesto Cloud package, as well as a silver Nesto Cloud package and a gold Nesto Cloud package. Each of these packages have individual offerings, and businesses can choose which one best suits them. Starting off with the Bronze Nesto package. This is your traditional off-the-shelf solution. It targets smaller credit unions and smaller private lenders that may have high-risk borrowers. The change management in this package will be basic virtual modules as well as online support and assistance. We're looking at a 1.75% service fee per mortgage issued on this package. Moving on to the Silver Nesto Cloud package. This is going to be a customized solution. So you're getting the off-the-shelf solution as well as additional tailoring to your specific business. This is going to target our more mid-sized clients like credit unions and private lenders. For change management in this structure, we're looking at initial in-person information and training sessions, as well as everything that comes with the Bronze offering package. For this package, we have a smaller service fee as it will come at a higher cost and target larger customers. So in this case, we are charging 1.25% service fee per mortgage issued. Finally, we have the Gold Nesto package. So this is a completely closed system offering. We were taking from leading providers at the moment, such as OpenAI, who offers a complete closed system for larger corporations. This is going to target the big 6 banks. We are going to implement a comprehensive change management team in this case. It's going to be a minimum of 1.5 years for a dedicated team to assist in the operations, as well as everything that the Bronze and the Silver packages have to offer. Here, we needed to be competitive, so we're offering a lower mortgage issuing fee at 0.5%. Finally, we're going to be implementing the post-sales change management team as our third pillar of our strategy. So here, our team consists of an internal lead, a senior manager, a manager, and junior and senior consultants. This will be tailored to each individual offering in our gold packages, as well as the online modules and the information sessions and in-person support in our silver package. So the internal lead is going to be that champion at the executive level. They're going to be identifying and removing the roadblocks before they even happen. Next, we're looking at senior managers whose role is to develop tailored change management strategies. So they're taking off of what the internal lead has provided and really curating that for the business. They're going to oversee online module creation as well as monitor the impact and adjust the strategy as necessary. Our manager is going to ensure workforce and team readiness. They need to ensure that there's effective implementation at all levels. And finally, our junior and senior consultants are going to be the backbone of this strategy. They're going to be guiding the employees within the clients' organizations that we serve to adopt to new processes, detect the end user resistance, as well as build ownership and engagement. Now we are going to talk about the ADKAR framework for change management, which is an effective framework when used in change management settings that the consultants can adapt. So first we'll talk about awareness. Employees need to be aware of why the change is necessary. In this case, we identified the growing need for speed in the mortgage issuing space. So employees understand that there is a need for this technology. Next, we'll talk about desire. Why do employees want to adopt the technology? Well, let's give them an incentive. When an employee issues more mortgages, what does that mean for them? Bigger bonuses, bigger incentives, and better work life in general. So this will create that motivation to adopt the new system. Next, we need to provide them with the knowledge. This is where our information sessions, our in-house consultants, as well as the online modules come into play. Next, we move on to their ability. They should feel able to apply the knowledge that they just learned in the information sessions, as well as from the consultants. So here, we are going to implement things like online testing, as well as what our senior consultants observe in the workforce, as well as our junior consultants, and we're going to build off of that to ensure that all employees are able. And finally comes the reinforcement. This is the most important in any change management strategy. You need to ensure that there is reinforcement so that successful adoption continues past the initial phase. So whether that be through incentives, employee bonuses, work parties, anything that's making employees feel proud that they adopted this new technology. Overall, in this ADCAR change management strategy, we are ensuring that there is successful adoption of the technology beyond just the first 6-month period or 1.5-year period, and that Nesto Cloud is going to become a part of their clients as opposed to just a pillar in their work life. Now, when we put all of these strategies together, we are targeting 2 SDGs. These are SDG 8, which is decent work and economic growth. We are empowering employees through these to then provide better services for their clients. Next, we have industry innovation and infrastructure. We are creating change using AI and leveraging that to create a better mortgage lending industry.
Now, what does it look like from a financial point of view? As my colleague Chloe had mentioned earlier, that we're not just giving a product, we're building a business. However, how do we also grow at the same time? That's where the top left of the screen, the Nesto Advantage strategy comes into matter. As we said earlier, that we will be giving 3 subscriptions, such as bronze, silver, gold, with a 1.75, 1.25, and 0.5%. Now, with that being said, that's also taken into consideration about the average mortgage size given out of $400,000 in a year. Now, based off that, we have a positive correlation on year on based on the forecasted revenue, and given to that an EBITDA of $20,198,574. And this was derived based on the key cost drivers, such as salaries, which is from 60,000 all the way up to 175 from junior all the way to the internal lead manager. Moving on to the internal IT, given the industry that we're in, we are accounting for at least 10% of our revenue into this cost. Moving on to the hosting, which is the industry average from 40,000 all the way up to 100,000 plus in a year, and we account for as 90,000 just to be in contingent. Moving on to the maintenance cost, as we know that this is not a one-time cost and we just forget about it. Moving on, that we will be constantly updating to ensure our partner doesn't face any difficulty going forward. In terms of comparison, the earnings before interest, tax, and depreciation is 3.28% for the year of 2027, and the revenue change is 2.53% positive. Now, what does this tell us? As long as our EBITDA change is more than the revenue, this means that we are growing in a sustainable manner year on year in the foreseeable future as well.
We truly believe that if you use your strategies in the next 3 years, Nesto Cloud will be changing the game when it comes to digital mortgages. Let's understand how. So, over the next 3 years, this is how your implementation plan will look like. You will establish secure internal structure. In the first year, you're creating roles of advisory roles and supervisory roles, and you're providing them with the training portal. In the second year, you begin like cross-functional updates from leadership team just to ensure consistency. And going forward, this will lead to a fully integrated government workflow, which will consist of approvals, updates, and documentations. When it comes to creating a 3-tiered B2B sales plan, in the first year, you create a team of experts to start working on this plan. In the second year, you roll out the sales plan to desired locations while also looking at new target locations, because we are forward thinking and we want to tackle the future as well, which will lead to expanding into new networks and international networks. Third, when it comes to implementing post-sales change management consulting, the efforts will be focused on creating a guideline and mock trials, just so that we are testing the waters, and if there's anything that needs to be changed, you're fixing it right away and not waiting until the crisis arrives. In the second year, you will start implementing the program using the knowledge that you have learned. By third year, you will establish your own Nesto ambassadors who will act as people like you and the team so that everybody is reinforced to use these programs.
Now with that, let's move on to the risk and mitigation. As we know that every strategy do come with risks, and how we intend to address this is the first one with being resistant to change. As with the new software, how are our employees going to take this change? We're going to address this with the change management consulting team and ensuring the ADCAR framework is put in effect from day one. Moving on to the internal threats, as this is going to be conducted by segregation of duties, ensuring no one individual has more control on one specific task. Finally, moving on to governance threats. This will be done by system piloting and an internal structure that is on a ready basis from today as soon as we sign the contract.
Today, Nestor Cloud was faced with two main challenges. We are confident by our three-pillar strategy, establishing secure internal structure, executing a three-tiered B2B sales plan, and implementing post-sales change management consulting program, you will be able to be a leader in this industry with an EBITDA of over $20 million. We're confident that by our strategies and by joining hands with us, you will be able to accelerate the mortgage system and boost productivity.
Perfect. The presentation is up. Thank you. We will now begin the question and answer period. Friendly reminder, judges, the Q&A period will only be for 10 minutes long. It'll start as soon as the first judge asks their question.
Okay, I'll start with a question. So I see that, again, thank you for the presentation. So you are really tackling membership tiers with a rollout and sales plan. So how do you start with this sales plan? How do you ensure that the mortgage volume is coming in? Because I saw a rollout for the sales, but from the sales funnel from the beginning, how do you get through sales?
Just to clarify, you mean selling the plans that we have, like the gold, bronze, and silver, the three packages? Yes. So those sales plan will be tackled by ensuring that the network that we already have, because you're already a full-fledged running company. So first we will go to people who are already working with us. The advantage is these clients already trust you. They have worked with you in the past. They have the experience of how well you are. So they will be able to join hands with you. Second, once you do that, that is when you already when you're doing this, you're already looking into new networks, who you can tackle, who you can tap into, the international markets or the national markets you can tap into. That is when you start using referrals. So the clients you have worked with, you start using their referrals to go to not only to new programs, but also at the same time to go to new people and pitch these packages that you have. And this is how you will expand your sales eventually going forward.
I have a follow-up question for you guys on the sales plan. I'm referring to the slide with the bronze, silver, gold package. From your discussion, is there any focus area, a place you will invest more, if it's in people or in money to target one of this plan? If you can just share maybe your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so when it comes to that, we definitely want to make sure that you sell most of the gold packages. These bronze packages are just to cater to the people who are in urgent need and are not able to pay the higher service fee. This is why we want to be more inclusive. That's why we created 3. When it comes to putting money in, we want to make sure that we put money in just not in the financial services that we're providing, but also in the people, because people are the key to this. The people who will be going and working with your team are not just providing value or advice to these companies, they are representing your company. So we have to really ensure that everyone's on the same page, and we will be training them rigorously through a consistent process that we will develop to provide all these 3 packages.
Can I ask a follow-up question? We all seem to have questions on the same slide.
Okay.
Where did the fees that you established per package come from?
So that fee was established through our market research analysis we were doing. We were seeing industry trends and how much people are willing to pay. Upon our research, we identified that customer discoveries people were able to pay over between 1 to 2%, and that is how we divided our structure.
How quickly would you implement the lead, the senior manager, the manager, and the senior consultant? How much time do you think you would need for that to implement those people?
In terms of the change management team, the most important area there is the hiring, because if you don't hire the right team, you're costing yourself a lot of money in the long run. So we want to take at least 6 months just to go through a rigorous hiring period and ensure that we're getting all of the right people. So maybe we're looking through LinkedIn, we're looking through other platforms, and really creating a presence of our firm where people want to come here to work for us. So once we're done with that hiring period, then we need to establish like the procedures and everything that follows.
As far as your growth targets, how did you establish the growth targets with the revenue and all that? On what basis did you establish the growth pattern over the period of
Yeah, sure. Because we currently forecasted a 3% on a year-on-year increase, but we believe that we are more capable than just 3%. With that being said, we also included our additional revenue drivers, since we are partnering. Factoring that into our analysis, that's where we got the EBITDA change of 3.28%.
If you can go back to
Yes.
that, sorry, I had a follow-up question about the sales. So the 3-tiered B2B sales plan.
Yes.
So you said that you're going to try to push the gold. So my follow-up question would be, we're looking at big banks here. What is the resistance that you predict targeting a bank, a big bank, versus a small credit union? You can't approach all of these with the same sales strategy. So what have you accounted for to make an assumption that you will go ahead and get these big 6 banks?
I can speak to that. So the number one thing here that differentiates a private lender, a credit union, and a big bank is their internal controls and governance. That's why we're offering an off-the-shelf solution to a smaller company. We're offering a completely closed system to a big bank. So in terms of what that looks like, we have drawn from OpenAI's innovations. We are also an AI provider. So we would like to have a completely closed system that is governed by the bank's controls. So this solves that issue of security, privacy, everything that the banks are concerned about. They have their own system, so they have your product. They might even name it something in conjunction with their bank to really make it their own and establish that trust with their customers.
How much time do you have left?
You have 4 minutes left.
I have a question on the team, of the change management team. So maybe just a clarification, yes please. Maybe just a clarification. So those are 4 roles, but how are they working together to ensure information is well transferred? Is there any overlaps between those roles, and who owns, let's say, a part of the funnel or part of the information transfer? Just to understand.
I can speak to that. So in this team, we have pulled from the traditional organizational structure, not to be generic, but because we know that it works. So we're looking at having an internal lead. When we look at our gold package, we will have 1 internal lead assigned to our big bank customer. Then we're looking at having senior managers. So this is not just 1 senior manager, we're looking at a comprehensive team here. When you're dealing with companies at the scale of RBC, CIBC, it's not just done with a couple of managers. You have huge teams to do this. So once we have those senior managers, they're going to be kind of the ones who are championing on the team level. So the internal lead is going to work with the executives at the bank to ensure everything runs smoothly there. Senior manager is going to work with the change management consulting team to ensure everyone is on the same page there and report to the internal lead. The managers work with the employees that are at the banks. So that's their responsibility. And then on the bottom level here, which is the most important level, is our junior and senior consultants. So they are actually working with the employees in the bank side by side to ensure that the end user involvement is at the highest level, because this is what ensures successful adoption, and successful adoption is what makes your company profitable.
Follow-up question on this. So I see in your rollout for the post-sales change management, you are monitoring the changes, which is great. So what are some of these adoption metrics that you're using to monitor? And how would you then remediate any negative metrics?
Yeah, this is why when we say we're monitoring changes, like let's say there's a new change in technology that we have to implement and we have to modify our technology based on that. Once we do that, after that, this is why we also ran like not like implementing to a very big scale, but like doing mock trials and seeing like how things go just to test the waters, because we want to make sure when we are going to big fishes in the world or like big giants in the industry, we are providing them with the best value possible, and that's how we do it.
And so what adoption metrics are you looking at to ensure successful change management and user adoption?
Yeah, no, for sure, I can answer that because that's a very important question, given that today everyone is concerned about AI disruptions and how is the employee going to react to it. Clearly, if my standard operating procedures were changed today, I would be worried that how am I going to perform my task, which I did yesterday. The key metric that we're going to use is by one-on-one personal feedback. Touching on the employee, speaking to them, that's where our junior consultant comes into matter. The junior is going to talk to the employee on a one-on-one perspective and then find out where they have to change, where they're having concerns, and what do we have to make it better for the employee itself to use our integration much more conveniently.
So that's great.
You can reply.
It's a little time consuming to do one-on-one. Are there other metrics that you're going to be pulling in from dashboards, for example, any things that you're looking at, such as training completion, user rates?
Yes, for sure, because that was gone without saying,
Yes.
because our employees will be given rigorous training, as my colleagues had mentioned previously.
Yes.
With that rigorous training includes the online working modules, training programs on a weekly basis. And if you're not being touched on the minimum training given out, then that employee will be flagged and will be questioned on what is the concerns.
The question answer period is up. Thank you, delegates and judges, for your participation. I will ask everyone to leave the room so we can start preparing the next presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Senior Director, Commercial Division, Royal LePage. Merci.
Good morning, Laurence Martin, Marketing Manager for Brooks Running Canada.
Perfect. I'll start when you say your first word.
Nesto Cloud has completely transformed the mortgage industry. They've created an end-to-end digital and AI-powered solution. Today, we're going to talk about how we can successfully communicate that transformation to our customers. Good afternoon. My name's Emma. This is Ella, Nolan, and Carson, and we are Precision Consulting. Starting off with the overall key question that we were asked of how to grow Nesto Cloud as an ecosystem growth platform. There were also a number of key tasks we were asked to address. The first is to provide Nesto Cloud with an ideal internal structure for this growth. The second is to define the role and responsibilities along with that. Third is to create that B2B sales strategy. And finally is to have a post-sale servicing sales for our client. There were also a number of key criteria and constraints that our team identified our solution needs to incorporate in order to be the most effective. The first is that our solution needs to differentiate us from this intensifying competition. We recognize this is a competitive market, and we want to make sure we communicate our difference. Next is we want to take advantage of all these new regulatory changes. The market is shifting with mortgages, and we want to ensure we're taking advantage of these opportunities. Next is we want to successfully communicate our value proposition to our customers. And finally is we want to ensure we align with this company's value and bring that innovative culture. There were also a number of key constraints that our solution had to fit in with. The first is that we need to ensure we're addressing all parts of the sales funnel. Next is we need to ensure that we align with all regulations, as this is a very sensitive and complex industry. And finally is that we recognize there's a limited number of customers. This is a B2B business, and there's only so many financial institutions we can target, so we need to be very personalized with our approach. So with that, I want to introduce our strategy, Sell, which is going to have a B2B strategy, and Structure, which is going to have that internal structure changes. And this is going to result in 133% ROI, a 36% revenue growth, and a $13 billion increase in mortgage lending support. And now I'll hand it off to Nolan to talk about our first strategy.
Thank you, Emma. So getting into our first strategy, which is that B2B sales strategy, we're going to be addressing that key task 3 and 4 that we mentioned earlier. So before we get into anything, our team conducted analysis on the current market of lending within Canada as a whole. And what we noticed is that renewals are going to increase in 2026 and have been recently because a few years earlier, markets were really good and a lot of people were renewing their mortgages. And now we've come up on that 5-year period where more are going to be renewed as well. Additionally, there's new regulation requiring this new technology, specifically open banking, that the customers of us need in order to be transparent with these regulations. And additionally, many competitors are entering the market, which is meaning that we have to get on top of it quicker and quicker. And the implications of this is since we make money through increasing volumes, now's a great time for us to get ahead and start acquiring as many customers as possible. Additionally, the increase in number of renewal cycles from this open banking means that we're going to have to have more and more new customers. And lastly, these new competitors will be looking for a loan management platform as they enter the lending market, and we can be the person who's primed to deliver them that value. And so all in all, what this key insight is that we need to act now with this sales strategy to make sure that we're taking advantage of these market conditions that are happening today and not a sales strategy that's going too far into the future. We need to act now and we need to act fast. And so within that, we then looked at what of the 4 companies or types of companies that we service we should look at within the market. And we used the criteria of, do we already have a current presence within this type of consumer? Additionally, is this a product that this company would want to use? Additionally, is it compatible with the systems that they're delivering right now? And then a few market originations and YOY growth criteria to make sure that this is something that we're actually going to make money in. When it came to deciding which of these to go for, we ended up going with traditional banks and credit unions, the 2 consumers that we're already servicing right now. And the biggest reason we didn't choose alternative lenders or fintechs is 1, alternative lenders had low market share, and so we'd be getting a limited amount of revenue. Additionally, fintechs most fintechs already have a platform such as Nesto Cloud apparent in their loan originating right now. So for us to target them, we would just be wasting time and money. So given that, Emma's going to introduce our customer journey.
Yeah, so now that we know who we're targeting, we wanted to introduce our target customer, Noah. So first, I want to draw your attention to these key challenges. These were challenges that were given to us in the case, and we conducted analysis for how we can best solve these challenges. So the first is that we have a friction associated with changing partners. There's very high cost and complexity, so we want to make this as easy as possible. Next is actually gaining partner trust for access data. This is very sensitive and financial information, so we want to ensure that we have trust with these partners and build that through our sales channel. And finally is that we want to ensure the use of our platform class implementation. So once we actually sell this product, how are we following up with our customers and ensuring that they're continuing to use our product correctly? So now let's dive a little bit into Noah. So Noah is an executive at a credit union, and this is the journey that he's going to go on. So first is that awareness. We want to make sure that our customers are actually aware of who Nesto Cloud is and what those services are that we're providing. The next is actually having a demonstration in order to understand what our product can actually do for him. We want to show how we can save time and money for these customers. Next is that actual conversion and purchase. We want to convert these customers after they learn about all we can do for them. And the final part of our sales journey is that follow-up that we talked about earlier. We want to encourage customers continuing to utilize the platform and be able to maximize what we can give them. So the key takeaway of this is that Nesto Cloud must address these challenges in order to convert Noah into a user of Nesto Cloud.
Next up, we know that AI is very important when implementing our core services. However, we think when we're trying to raise awareness and get potential clients, we really want to be face-to-face and focus on building those relationships. So first, to meet those target companies where they're at, we want to be going to national mortgage conferences. And here we want to plant the seed for potential customers to convert over to our company. Here we'll be able to display the features of our company. We'll show different demonstrations, have high-level overviews of what we can offer and our value proposition. And most importantly here again is we're having that face-to-face collaboration and relationship building with our sales team and potential companies. At these surveys, we'll also have surveys with QR codes to our website to be able to implement them further into our sales strategy. And alongside with attending these conferences, we'll be consuming normal marketing operations of having that targeted ads. And the key benefit here again is that we're planting that seed to switch future customers by meeting them where they're at and having that face-to-face contact for relationship building.
So these conferences are going to start to hit on that key challenge of that friction with transition, and it's going to hit on that awareness portion because now we're meeting these customers where they're at these conferences and planting the seed for them to join us.
So once we have Noah scanning this QR code and filling out this pre-interest survey on our website, we're going to have a new conversion process similar to what's already in place now with a few key enhancements to make sure it's as personalized as possible so our potential consumers know exactly what they're getting out of the Nesto Cloud platform. So what is this survey that we've been talking about? Well, once they scan the QR code at these events, as well as just go to our website to learn more about us in general, we're going to have a survey that has questions including the size of the bank and credit union, what their current mortgage volume is right now, just estimates to make sure they're not worried about privacy concerns, current tech pain points, etc. And the big benefit here is by having this interest survey before we've even developed our meetings with them, we're able to create marketing material that's as personalized to this customer as possible. So with this survey data, our sales team members will now create a personalized demo behind the scenes exactly to this company as a whole. Additionally, adding to this demo, we're going to have a cost calculator, so we're able to show this company exactly how much cost savings they'll have as well as time if they adopt the Nesto Cloud platform. And the key benefit here is this personalization allows our customers to see exactly how Nesto Cloud can help them as a whole right now, which compared to the demo process right now is going to make it a lot quicker as well as a lot more personalized. So now that we have these demo materials, we need to actually show our customers in real time. And this is where we're going to start to convert customers to utilizing Nesto Cloud and showing them why the switching from whatever they're using now to Nesto Cloud will be as beneficial as we promised it will be. So after it's created, our sales team will meet with stakeholders and showcase these personalized demos as well as the cost savings calculator so they can visualize exactly what value will bring to them versus whatever technological processes they're using right now. And I just want to point out some key messaging that our team is going to be using. As I mentioned earlier from my analysis, now is the perfect time for these companies to begin to start developing more and more customers, given the influx of renewals that we're seeing recently. And so the big message here is they have to act now and gather their platform if they want to maximize their profits while the markets are strong. And they can, so they can actually increase their top line growth by having this reduced mortgage cycle and the ability to take on more and more mortgages, as well as reducing that bottom line through those cost savings and those time savings as well. So we need to make sure we use that messaging to really drive forward why they should switch to Nesto Cloud, regardless of or despite what competitor technology they might be using right now.
And And then this is going to successfully answer that first key challenge of that friction, as well as it's going to hit on that demonstration. Now they're going to see exactly how Nesto Cloud can help them and save that money. So the key takeaway of that is Noah is fully convinced about all the benefits that Nesto Cloud can offer him.
Next up, we also, again, to be meeting with these companies face-to-face, we want to be hosting an appreciation gala. We'll be bringing multiple different executives in and having not only just potential and prospective new users, but also our current users. This will create a networking opportunity, and we'll have real live testimonials for those potential users to hear and really build that trust with us. Since we're managing finances, we know it's very important to develop that trust and have those relationships. So again, we want to be meeting face-to-face and show our appreciation. Again, we want to boost loyalty within our current customers and partners as well at these different galas. Now, the key takeaway here is that we're gaining that trust because we're taking companies' data, and we know this is very important for them, and they don't just want to give it to any company. Through developing a personalized event and having face-to-face relationships, we'll be able to build that trust.
And this is going to answer that second key challenge of gaining partner trust. Now we have this face-to-face connection with these customers, and they know that they can trust us with that sensitive information. And then this is going to successfully convert them now that they trust us and they've seen the benefits that we can offer them. And the key takeaway is now that after meeting with those current customers and talking to Nesto Cloud, he can entrust their data in their platform and will successfully integrate all of this into Nesto Cloud.
So we know another task that was asked of us in the mandate was to also make sure that we continue post-service maintaining that customer relationship to make sure they also are able to use this platform in the future where we actually develop our revenue. So there's two main ways we looked at this. The first is to ensure the use of Nesto Cloud, and the second is to maintain a satisfied consumer base. For ensuring the use of Nesto Cloud, we're going to be creating a training module that will show employees of our now current customers how this platform can save employees time and effort to make sure that they're actually using that. Additionally,
we're going to offer a co-marketing stipend for these prospective customers of 5% of Nesto Cloud's take rate. There's two main reasons why we decided this co-marketing stipend is a good idea. First off, Nesto mentioned in the case packet that they're looking to grow their co-marketing initiatives. This is the perfect opportunity. And second, it financially incentivizes these customers to save costs on their marketing and grow their top-line revenue through these marketing initiatives.
So now that we're ensuring that our customers are going to use Nesto Cloud, we also want to make sure that we maintain a satisfied consumer base. And so to do this, we're going to have continuous automated check-ins to make sure that we address issues early and often before they become problems. Additionally, we're going to add a new 24-hour helpline so that customers can call with issues and we can have trained specialists fixing the problems as soon as they arise. This is going to benefit the customer because they're going to have access to help from us at any hour of the day. And the key takeaway here is through these two post-sale servicing methods, we're going to encourage customers to use Nesto Cloud in their day-to-day operations, as well as allow for continuous support.
And with this final part of our sales strategy, we're going to hit on that last key challenge of having that post-platform integration. And that this is going to successfully end Noah's journey with that follow-up. So now we've convinced him to join us. He knows that he can trust us with our data, and he's getting those cost savings. And now that he's integrated with Nesto Cloud, we're having that follow-up services so he can continue to utilize this platform. So the key takeaways overall is that Noah is now a satisfied customer of Nesto Cloud and is going to continue to use our product. And then this is going to lead to 133 ROI as well as a 30% revenue growth.
Next up, we'll be going into the structure part of our strategy. Now, here we have outlined, we know what we need to be doing externally to get those relationships built, but here's what we need to be doing internally within our company to focus on the structure. And here we've outlined the 6 different milestones. So first up, for conferences, we need to make sure our sales team has very specific training with the messaging Nolan talked about previously. We also want to make sure we have our demonstration and materials created that way customers can really visually see what we're offering and bringing to their company. We also want to sign up for the conferences that we've outlined that we think would be good to attend in 2026. We also, for our new conversion process, again, want to focus on training our messaging for our sales team. That way we're properly showing our value proposition. Next up, we want to make sure that we have the program survey and cost calculator created and ready for use for our sales team. And then finally, we want to build a template for the marketing demonstration. That way, when our sales team gets that data from the survey, they can put it automatically into that template, and it'll be easy for them to use for a lot of different companies. And here we decided to build this in-house instead of outsourcing to really focus on building that trust with our clients and their data.
Next, for these appreciation dinners, we want to make sure we decide on venue as well as vendors to make sure this is a really premium event that our current customers as well as prospective customers are going to want to go to. And then we're going to want to send out the invites for it, as well as train our sales team on how to set up these events, as well as our higher sales staff on how to actually run it and make sure the dinner goes as well as we would like it to. And then finally, that service line, we're going to create this call center as well as staffing people to work it. We want to make sure that the staff for this are very highly trained so that any queries that come in, we're able to handle them with precision and expertise. And then finally, that call center training once you've actually staffed them.
And then also for those automated follow-ups, we want to focus on utilizing a CRM to make sure those relationships are further being built and not just a one-time contact. And then also create email templates, that way we could quickly automate that process. And then finally, for the training models, we'll be outsourcing this training to the company to make sure it's unified and easy to follow, and also have different feedback services to ensure that companies are on board and understand our goals and expectations.
Now, we know that you also, in the packet, asked for the roles and responsibilities for these strategies as a whole. So we split it up in the following way. At the very top, there's going to be the VP of Sales overseeing all strategic objectives, as well as the high-level responsibilities. And then additionally, with this new call center, we're going to have a call center manager and that call center team, and they're just going to handle all of the call center responsibilities. Additionally, we're going to have regional managers. We're not sure exactly how many of these Esto Cloud currently has. However, we've just put 3 up here as a visualization, and these are going to attend the appreciation galas, focus on day-to-day operations, as well as uphold that strategic vision. And there's going to be a number of different team leads who are responsible for their teams, as well as ensuring the quality of messaging by the sales team. And then under these team leads, there's going to be a number of different selling divisions. They're going to handle the day-to-day selling, as well as setting up and running those conference booths at the different conferences we plan to attend. And the impact of this is we're going to be accomplishing key task 1 and 2. And finally, we're going to increase mortgage lending supported, or we're going to support that increase in mortgage lending that we pointed out earlier of $13 billion. I'm going to pass off to Carson now to go into these financials.
Thank you, Nolan. Let's go ahead and jump into the implementation timeline. You can see it right here. Now, like my colleagues mentioned, it's important and integral that Nesto Cloud integrates these strategies today. So we've got a couple action steps for them to take today in order to ensure success of these strategies. A couple I'd like to highlight right now is those mortgage lending conferences. Registering for those specific conferences and starting the blueprint of the booths will be important so that they can start going there as soon as possible. Second is those gala dinners. Like they were talking about earlier in terms of those sales teams repositioned, they're going to help and establish a blueprint for the event to make sure that they're getting as many customers and prospective customers as possible. Now, jumping into the numbers, we're looking at a little bit over 11 million in Canadian dollars over the next 3 years, with the majority of it coming from the cost of goods sold from the revenue generation. A couple key cost drivers I'd like to highlight is the galas, sitting a little bit over $1 million, and the co-marketing variable fee that we mentioned earlier of 5% of $1.4 million. We also analyzed the cost across a 3-year span and separated it across the different tactics. I'm happy to go over that in the Q&A. Moving on to revenue, looking at roughly 27 million incremental revenue over the next 3 years for Nesto Cloud. The year 1 revenue is going to be sitting at roughly 4 million, and year 3 at 15 million Canadian dollars. And the reason that it's growing is because it takes a couple years to convert these customers into actual paying customers. So once we start with the marketing, we start with the sales team, we're going to be able to establish these relationships and then ultimately start seeing revenue generation growing over the next couple years. We're also looking at these KPIs of 133% and 36% revenue growth. In terms of the KPIs, I just mentioned the last one is the 13 billion increase in mortgages ported. And then finally, we also anticipate some risks and some mitigating actions to avoid those risks. One I'd like to highlight right here is that Nesto can't afford these strategies. However, in the case packet, it mentioned that they have 80 million in Series C funding that will help support this growth. And secondly, like I mentioned, the majority of the costs come from cost of goods sold. So in order to incur those cost of goods sold, they're going to have to generate the revenue that are associated with the cost of goods sold, so they're able to pay off that cost from the revenue generated. Now, our 2 strategies, Sell and Structure, will help Nesto Cloud grow their ecosystem platform. I would now like to open the floor for any questions. Thank you.
Perfect. The presentation is up. Thank you. We will now begin the question and answer period. Friendly reminder, judges, the Q&A period will only be for 10 minutes long.
So going to your internal structure, thank you for your presentation. I see that there's a lot of sales integrated in there. You're going after banks. How do you mitigate resistance that you're going into a bank and basically saying that you're going to be taking all the underwriting services and they might be losing people along the way, so how do you mitigate this resistance within your internal structure?
Yeah, so I think we would hope that companies are taking Nesto Cloud and instead of firing employees, they're rather implementing into their processes now so their employees have more time to spend on other activities that require a more manual and critical thinking approach. So it's not necessarily removing employees, but more removing time from processes that can be automated so they can spend more critical time on other stuff such as finding new prospective clients and other activities, as well as reducing costs along the way.
And to add on to that, a lot of companies right now are looking to integrate AI for those reasons to enhance their company. And so they want to be a market leader with that and they want to get onto the trend before it's too late. So we think that would be a really good value proposition to the company.
So just a quick follow-up. So what role and responsibility would be necessary in your internal structure to ensure all of this beyond sales?
Yeah, can we go back to, yeah, do you mind if I grab that? Sorry about that. Yeah, so the role and responsibility that would make sure that we're communicating this, well, what I would like to point out is the selling division would probably be that first point of contact to these companies to start to initially sell that idea, but to communicate how we can maintain that these companies adhere to social benefits and standards as well. I imagine that would go up the ladder to the team leads, who would be able to describe to these companies how exactly it could be integrated into their current, organizational chart in a way that it's an added value to the employees that are there and the ability of the productivity they're able to get out, and not necessarily a takeaway from this great culture that I imagine a lot of these banks have developed. So the team leads.
So how many of these conferences a year would you attend, and which people would be manning the booths at the conferences?
So just in terms of like a high level, we're looking at 6 per year across like the major big cities in Canada, so Montreal, Vancouver, Toronto, those cities. And in terms of people who's like manning the booths, if you want to hit on that.
That'll be the sales team as well, which will be specifically training to focus on building those relationships. That way we know at the MPC National Mortgage Conference, the big 6 banks in Canada will all be there. So by having the sales team manage these booths, they'll be able to start that initial contact, and then at all future sales touch points as well, they'll be able to continue building that relationship.
And just to add on to that, they're going to get training on how to run these booths from their team leads, which would follow how responsibilities flow down the ladder in other operations as well.
Follow-up question on the conferences. Have you thought about what could be a good KPI or good success metric to evaluate if your conference is going well? I know you spoke about the QR code, just maybe to keeping them in the loop after, but have you thought of any other metric that could be interesting to follow after the conference?
Yeah, I think at those booths, from more of a qualitative perspective, and then I'll let Carson go into more of the numbers, we have someone there counting the number of people who enter the booth so we can see exactly what our total reach is. But then you mentioned the QR code, and one that I wanted to point out would be kind of our click rate from that event, so the number of people who actually scan that QR code. And then once they're on the website, I think we'd also want to see how many people are really filling out the survey to make sure that the survey that we're offering on the website isn't too intensive, where people look at all the questions, decide not to follow it. So I think throughout that entire process, we'd be monitoring our conversion rates to make sure that we're offering the best interface possible, and as well to make sure these conferences are working, so that we're not, going to one conference realizing it's not a great idea and then continuing across multiple years.
Yeah, and additionally, in terms of the conversion rate, I'm happy to walk you through the conversion rate we calculated in the finances. But one thing I'd really like to highlight with these conferences is getting the people from these conferences to the galas. So one thing that we understood from our market research is that these mortgage lenders and these financial institutions really value face-to-face relationships. That's why we're looking to get in front of the people. Like Noah, our target consumer, we're looking to get in front of him at these conferences. So a good KPI to answer your question would be to see how many people from these conferences are able to go to the galas and then ultimately end up becoming a customer.
Let me know if there's a better slide for me to go to.
And like 2 more slides.
Yep.
In terms of conversion rates overall, we did some analysis of conversion rates that other websites have kind of released of B2B SaaS specifically. These are the sources, but in the top right, you can see the different percentages that they're giving out. Our calculations take a conservative estimate of 0.6% from our sales team. So this is kind of like a conservative estimate to make sure that we are hitting those revenue goals. If they're able to convert more, essentially those different percentages, then you can see they're able to double, triple the conversion. So we just wanted to make sure that we were staying conservative with the calculations.
Question, because you mentioned actually that face-to-face is really important in this industry, but when you're at these conferences, the next step would be a QR code and a scan, which is not a face-to-face.
Yeah.
So is that ultimately the QR card the only action item that comes out of that, or is there something else that will be happening from a face-to-face perspective?
So adding their contact to our database in general from them attending our booth is going to be another way for us to keep in touch with them. But I think the idea with the QR code is, since they're going to be scanning it actually at the actual conference, we're going to have actually sales members there to help them, I guess, walk through this pre-enter survey. So it is still a little bit of a face-to-face experience. However, if they don't have enough time and they have to fill it out at their house, it's going to be explained at these conferences that it's just one step in the process to get them in front of another representative. But it would be, I guess, wasting time for us to have to ask the questions through a call when we just want to deliver them the materials and give them, make sure that we use their time the best possible, because we know a lot of these executives are really busy.
And also to emphasize, this QR code is just that first point of contact. This is where we're meeting them, we're explaining what our company does, and then they can scan that QR code and go to our survey. But we're going to have those personalized meetings, those personalized demos, talking about their pain points and how we can actually save cost for their company. So we're going to have that personalization further down the line as well.
Follow up to this personalization, how do you attempt to go into that personalization? What's your process there in terms of building something customized for this client who might not even be your client? So if there's time, cost associated with this.
A big part here is from the QR codes, we're having them input some just preliminary data, and then from that we'll be able to build very personalized recommendations to them when we're still selling them, and that way they can see specific to their company what they can gain from our services, the cost they would be reducing, and then tailoring just our sales approach to their company.
Yeah, and in terms of potential, customers that we might not get and the cost that, this will be, just one customer would result in a large amount of revenue for our company, given the limited number of financial institutions in Canada. When you think about other markets, how many customers there really might be. So we're willing to take on that cost, because even converting just a few customers will make it all worth it and result in a high ROI.
You still have time. Yeah.
If we can go to the slide of the customer journey, thank you for putting that in. I have a question on the.
Right here? Sorry, I'm confused on the up and down on the clicker. Maybe I should give it to Ella.
So I understand how the customer is going through the business and the different touch points. Do you already have in mind who's going to be in charge of those different touch points within the sales team? Is it the same person? Is there a different responsibility? Just to understand who owns which part, or how do you see the sales funnel being handled through the customer?
Yeah, if I go back to the roles and responsibilities slide, so that awareness piece, which is the conferences, the selling division is going to be setting up and running them, but they're going to be trained on how to run them by the team leads. And then once they're actually filling out the survey, our selling division is going to be the ones who's putting together those personalized demos with that data. But any really high impact customers will probably move up to the team lead for the actual meeting as a whole. However, some of those lower impact customers will just be handled by some of the higher ups in our selling division as a whole. When it comes to the galas, so getting them to actually trust that we're going to take care of their data, that's going to be attended by the regional managers, just because we're going to have a lot of really important clients that we currently have, as well as prospective customers there. But it's going to be set up by our selling division, just to make sure we're splitting up responsibilities as efficiently as possible. Yes?
This will be the last question.
Who is going to champion this change? So we're very sales heavy, but this is you're disrupting. You're going to you're disrupting. So have you considered the change management portion within the business?
May I clarify, for Nesto Cloud or for our prospective clients?
So these are clients of yours. So beyond sales, you close the deal. There's going to be post adoption. So within that, there's gonna be resistance and issues that come up, so
Yeah.
who is owning that piece, championing it within the company, and then ensuring that the resistance is addressed?
So we're going to have our team leads come in with this new training module that we're offering. And through this training module for our new clients, it's going to really emphasize, one, how to use the platform, but more specifically, how employees at this company can benefit from using the platform. So it's going to emphasize a lot how it's going to save these different employees time and effort throughout their tasks during the day. And the team leads are going to go in to implement that just because it's a more, I guess, a high, not risk, but it's a more important task than potentially some of the other aspects we have the selling division at.
And,
Perfect. Oh, sorry.
and to add on to that, we'll have our automated check-ins. We'll be having feedback also because we don't want to just give them a service and say, here, take it. We want to be seeing what's working well for them, what's not working, and how we can change it to adapt to their business.
Perfect. Thank you. The question answer period is up. Thank you, delegates and judges, for your participation. I will ask everyone to leave the room so we can start the deliberation period. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Pleasure to meet you.
All right, hello, my name is Dinu. I will be your timekeeper for today. Before we continue, I would just like to confirm that this is Team C.
Correct.
Perfect. I will show you warning signs where there are 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and 30 seconds remaining. Once the 10-second countdown is up, I will say stop, after which the team must stop talking immediately. After a 10-minute question Q&A period will follow, I would like to remind you that all teams must present for a minimum of 15 minutes and all team members must speak during the presentation, but not necessarily during the Q&A period. Audience members, we ask that you place your phones on silent mode and remain seated in the room for the duration of the full presentation and Q&A period. I will now let the judges introduce themselves. Once they are done, you may begin your presentation and the timer will start. Judges?
Teresa Malawani, Vice President, Head of Wealth Planning and Tax Consulting at Raymond James.
Jennifer Plato, I'm head consultant at Hobart Aerospace.
George Renault, Senior Director, Commercial Division, Royal Affairs Council.
Good afternoon, Laurence Laflemme, Marketing Manager at Works Remington.
Trust is at the core of every decision, and your company, Nesto Cloud, is continuing to capture it as you deliver value to new clients. But as the Canadian mortgage industry is changing and becoming more competitive, it's very important for you to have a strategy that will allow you to scale into a digital lending platform. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Kayla. I'm here with my colleagues Olivia, Evan, and Ben. And we at Horizon Consulting are so honored to be here with you today to present to you a strategy for growth. Now we can see that the Canadian mortgage industry is experiencing this growth, expected to reach $400 million by 2030. And you are providing value to the Canadian lending ecosystem, serving over 500,000 customers since inception.
However, external challenges are really posing issues in your mission to scale, with competition, regulatory pressures, with OSFI increasing its regulations within the Canadian market, as well as perceived trust really shaping that environment as you grow forward. Therefore, trust is really needed to power forward your success, and you must build trust to grow your platform as a driver for change.
Now, we know that you have grown since your 2022 inception. You've managed more than $70 billion in residential and commercial mortgages. But most importantly, we're seeing an open banking policy shift, which means that there's more opportunity for you to grow in the Canadian market.
However, to do so, you must address the following key objectives. First, what will your internal structure, what will the roles and responsibilities look like to shape your growth? Secondly, what will the B2B sales strategy be to really scale and to secure those new clients? And thirdly, what is your post-sales servicing model looking like to sustain those clients as they go forward?
And this will be done through a winning strategy, scaling with financial institutions, focused on two key parts. The first is internal structure, which leverages technology-driven background to develop a software-as-a-service team and training support. And secondly, activation, enabling Nesto Cloud to secure and support financial institutions and their various stakeholders. So some of the key impacts of our recommendation will be 2 clients by 2030, mid to large size institutions, 41.1 million in mortgage origination revenue, and lastly, a 29.6 million 5-year NPV. But before we get to our recommendation, we need to understand how we got there.
We first analyzed the different types of customer segments that you might want to pursue because we recognize that they have really varied needs, sizes of scale, and different levels of customization that would need to be fulfilled on in order to be able to reach these clients where they're at. So we evaluated them across their market value, their scalability, the perceived trust that they have, as well as your return on investment in pursuing these clients.
Now we know that right now you're focused primarily on traditional banks and credit unions, but we really do believe that traditional banks are going to be the key focus for the next few years. One reason being the market value as well as the return on investment for your organization, but most importantly, the scalability, the ability for you to capture this new opportunity within the market and to be able to be one of the first movers in this area. But one thing that we also really wanted to draw your attention to is that we know that 78% of banks are now modernizing their technology, especially because of the new policy shifts and the ability to and need to provide transparency and trust to their clients. And that is something that is a key differentiation for your organization. We know that you have experience in this area, and this is an expertise that you can leverage to capture this area. And we know that also there is that volume for you to capture, and you now have institutional banking and credibility with your recent clients, making this the optimal area for you to focus on. Next, taking a deeper look into those large institutional banks, we know that we must align your offering with their needs. So why are they looking for technology solutions in the first place? Well, we know that they currently have older legacy systems, which are harder to change, and despite they still need to be able to change some of their systems to keep up with the current trends in the market. We also know that there are consumer expectations as well as stakeholder expectations to be able to provide that transparency. And lastly, we know that there is operational cost and efficiency when it comes to modernization.
However, along each of these items are key issues that you should address. First, the customization level of control that these organizations or clients will be able to have in transitioning over to your platform. Secondly, their operational stability as they implement this across a large size of business across all of their channels. And thirdly, proven security and reliability because you are dealing with highly sensitive client data.
But this really poses as to why your software as a service is most aligned. Well, we know, as Olivia discussed, that they need that higher need for control as well as ease of integration, but especially because of the complexity of these large institutions. It's very important for you to select the software as a service because it's most easy to be able to scale across the different departments. So we believe that Nesto Cloud Software as a Service is going to be most aligned when targeting this market.
Now, what are some of the key values that these large institutional banks have that you really need to be able to fulfill on in order to reach them? First, data security is a key concern that they have, with institutions hesitant to move away from their legacy systems without that proven perceived benefit and proof of security when dealing with that highly sensitive data. Secondly, trust and reputation, with 85% of banking institutions reluctant to trust their operations to a third-party firm that doesn't have those decades of experience. And finally, stakeholder alignment. 2/3 of banks are resistant to change to new systems, especially given the size of these large institutional banks that have many employees and large variety of teams.
And with that, that brings us to our strategy, which is scaling with financial institutions. Now, as we've discussed, we need to start by looking internally. How are we going to actually modify that structure and ensure that we're ready to take on these new clients, and most importantly, they trust us? So this all starts with restructuring your dedicated SAS cloud team. Now, we know you currently have that existing mortgage cloud team, but we want to expand this into what we like to call the Cloud Center of Excellence. Now, this is a modeling framework that's critical and ensures cross-collaboration. It'll allow you to define the necessary best practices key to any technology implementation. And finally, it'll increase the support for client training on these lending processes.
And this is extremely effective for financial institutions because it allows us to go from reactive to proactive. So understanding the needs of these organizations and making sure that the 75 or 70% of products that fail to deliver, our cloud team is able to identify and prevent those early delays. Additionally, one of your competitive moats is your regulatory compliance. So leveraging existing certifications that your organization has earned and using that to scale trust with these large banks.
Now let's understand a little bit more what this model looks like. Well, the change management component is key here. When we look at the CCOE model, it's governance, engineering, and strategy. So what does this look like? Well, this organization is directly responsible, yes, for these software as a service platforms and projects, but critically through a few key areas. The governance and policy setting, so each manager of the project knows what they're responsible for. The cultural transformation necessary when implementing AI in a space where AI wasn't traditionally used. The skill development and upskilling that we'll touch on in a little bit. And finally, again, that process modernization, moving to standardized processes that we see across all facets of technology today.
And some of the critical implementation steps here is one, aligning best practices. So as we know, financial institutions are extremely decentralized. So it's key to make sure that we develop these processes ahead of time that can be scaled and replicated at other institutions. Additionally, team development. We want to make sure that this new team that Ben has outlined is integrated and well fitted for your organization.
So now let's get into a little bit what it takes, and that starts with training. Now there's a few easy training components here. Let's start by looking at a new offering to your value chain, which is the Nesto AI Support Bot. Now of course this leverages your AI-centric focus, but what does this really do? Well, it's managed directly by that cloud team. It also utilizes the same REST and SOAP APIs that you already use with your lending-specific AI tools, ensuring that it's very easy to implement internally. And then finally, it's going to utilize natural language processing.
And this is extremely beneficial for your organization because your platform team now understands where they can step into support. Number two, it ensures AI Support Bot is properly used in terms of client data and data privacy. And last but not least, it enables AI to understand the tone and sentiment. We understand that plenty of customers and employees are frustrated with chatbots, so we want to make sure that we understand the tone and what that customer really requires.
Essentially, the overview here is clear. The Nesto AI support bot acts as that frontline support for these new financial clients you're working with and people who are getting used to AI, but that support team is right behind them with the necessary governance, policies, standardization, and training skills necessary. So this is great. It's a critical component that we have the support, but without data security communicated, no trust is actually going to be built with these institutions. So what does that look like? Well, for one, we know you already have very strong security standards. This is excellent. You're established and you have the necessary components. But ultimately, this all comes down to communication. So what are ways you can communicate those Type 2 compliant and AI CPA compliancy policies to those clients? Well, for one, we'd say this is a place to start. You can have a trust feature directly on your website that explains exactly how these certificates translate to real data security. Keep in mind, we understand that the actual people you need to sell here are the CTOs and the heads of these banks who aren't necessarily comfortable or understand what these policies and certificates mean. So that's why it's directly aligned with the values. It aligns that benefit-first mindset that most C-suite executives have with the non-technical excellence and implementation of what these actually do.
But even more importantly, we need to recognize the strategic partnerships that your organization has spent so much time and effort in securing these past couple of years. We believe that we can highlight critical case studies with the existing partnerships, such as IG Wealth as well as Canada Life, to further drive trust. Now this is extremely important because we found that 97% of B2B customers cite case studies for the most beneficial trust-building tools.
And the core message is clear. Nesto Cloud, you have the security measures in place. Now you must effectively communicate them to potential clients up front, ensuring that you maintain their business for the long term.
And this brings us to our second recommendation, which is activation. How can we look to the internal or external environment and enable Nesto Cloud to secure and support financial institutions and their various stakeholders? So we started off by taking a look at who are the key stakeholders here. The first and one of the most important is the head of mortgages, and the key emphasis that they care about is the operational efficiencies and the cost savings. So what we'd like to communicate here is all of the operational efficiencies, such as the amount of cost and advancements they're able to initiate.
The second key stakeholder we wanted to focus on was that technology team, and they really care about the ease of integration, especially because, as previously mentioned, they do tend to have older legacy systems. So the key benefit we do want to communicate here is that it's easily integrated through existing APIs, which is a core value proposition of your company.
And the third one here is the risk and compliance team. They're most concerned about the data privacy, and what we want to emphasize here is that we are already compliant with several MOR, RS1, and various other regulatory standards and certificates.
And lastly, one of the most critical stakeholders as well are those employees. We know that they can be resistant to change and are hesitant to try something new, especially when it comes to technology. And so again, they also do care about ease of use, but we really want to highlight the key benefit, which is that it cuts time spent on manual tasks by up to 25%, allowing them to focus their time elsewhere on other value-added tasks.
And to further focus this presentation, we believe that the product heads and the employees are the most crucial users of Nesto's products, so they are who we want to concentrate the remainder of this presentation on.
So how do we actually create a B2B sales strategy to reach these large financial institutions? We want to focus on the key messaging, that Nesto Cloud is here to help you save time and money while remaining ahead of technological changes.
And the first way to do this effectively is the awareness through existing relationships. Now we understand in financial institutions, one of the most beneficial ways to secure clients is through relationships. Business is all about relationship building. And we found that businesses, 84% of B2B businesses in terms of decision makers start their buying process with a referral. So this can look like two different ways. First, leveraging existing relationships, as we mentioned previously, various subsidiaries or connected companies, as well as formal employees and personal connections who work at some of these large financial institutions.
And secondly, the other tactic we want to focus on is awareness through outbound marketing. We know that B2B business is primarily relationship driven, and through our analysis, we were very surprised to see that 82% of industry trade show attendees have buying authorities, which will allow you to make connections with the people that you need to most. An example that we found was the Real Estate Forum, a trade show that happens where you could attend and be able to connect with a lot of these larger financial institutions.
Now, we also understand that awareness is a critical part of any marketing campaign, but so is conversion. How do we actually drive conversion based off that awareness? So the first tactic we like to emphasize here is live demos. Live demos are both common but extremely important. We plan to continue with a lead with value approach. We plan to focus on clear product differentiators here. These demos are going to be short, roughly 15 to 30 minutes in length, and they're going to be conducted using internal industry data, again, appealing to the privacy requirements of these financial institutions. We're also going to follow this up with communication. So we're going to gather and rank a list of contacts per organization or relationship. We're going to utilize the partnership team to send out personalized emails and encourage further communication and live integration to eliminate any further of these reservations.
Now, why are demos so important to the conversion of this plan? Well, one, tangible value demonstration is required by 87% of decision makers, especially when this is a new type of platform that is not familiarized by a lot of these decision makers. It's very important for them to be able to experience the product and have any reservations about it answered. And secondly, we can also see that it's proven to increase conversion by about 20%, which is very significant, and is something that we really want to focus on to help build trust with these consumers.
And a quick proof of concept of email marketing, collecting contacts, referrals, and again, building trust with clients would be CIBC. Their capital markets investment banking product groups use monthly industry sector reports, something that we recognize that you already do, highlighting their experience in distributing them through email marketing. So we saw that they were able to increase the amount of pitches won by 12%. They developed greater industry recognition. We are also surprised to find that they developed over 1,000 plus senior relationships formed.
And lastly, we also recognize that a post-servicing plan is required to ensure proper adoptions among employees. Again, one of your most critical stakeholders. And one of the key insights we found was that 70% of learning comes from those hands-on experiences, which is why we believe that mandatory learning materials are going to be something that's very important. This will integrate their learning materials into the existing employee management software such as Workday, and these will be designed by your organization to ensure that proper understanding, use cases, and benefits of the services.
And to further follow this up, we would like to also negotiate and implement workshops that are going to be led by some of your most experienced team members. This is again going to eliminate further reservations of the employees and develop a second touch point and a second point of understanding.
And the last touch point we wanted to highlight was those informal experiences. We know that informal communication serves as the most effective method of familiarizing one with new experiences. You might have someone like asking their colleague, hey Jim, how did you integrate the new Nesto software? And they might respond with their own experience of how they use the chatbot to find these instructions. So these informal interactions are also going to be very important to help drive the use of your product.
Yeah, that we've gone through the specifics of our plan. Let's take a look at some of the impacts.
So let's start by looking at our timeline. And this phased plan makes sure that those key internal changes are done up front and drive that support through to the end client relationships. So what does this look like? Well, for one, it starts with hiring and establishing that CCOE team. Now we understand that because this team is so cross-collaborative, a lot of that will be internal transfers from other divisions, but a lot of it will also be external hiring. And that's something we factored later on in our costs. Secondly, for the activation, we want to create those initial client touch points by engaging existing relationships and attending those conferences. Once again, it's the key decision makers at the C-suite level we want to reach, so we want to make sure we're reaching them in ways that apply with that benefit and value first approach.
Now, recognizing that trust is such a key pivotal part of this integration plan with these clients, we have mitigated the following risks across each point of the client sales and servicing plan.
So let's start off by looking at the second risk, which is the most important, and that's that lack of platform engagement among employees. This is of course a huge risk because these are employees who know how they do the mortgage and lending procedure, and you're asking them to essentially change that process, which of course will reduce your service revenue, which you've highlighted is the #1 method that you're getting revenue from these clients. So in order to mitigate that, we further invest into those employee support and those touch points, essentially looking at ways that we can potentially get on site or find ways to show those employees that are actually using the software, this is truly going to make their jobs easier, more efficient, and at the end of the day, send them home before it gets dark.
Now, how are we going to measure success along the next phase of our plan? First, at each phase of the procurement process, we really wanted to start by looking internally and reducing that procurement cycle time so that employees are actually able to go through that procurement process a bit quicker when looking at new clients. Secondly, the demo participation rate will really measure the amount of interest that clients or prospective clients will have in taking your service into consideration. Thirdly, target clients secured. We are hoping to onboard 1 in 2027, begin that procurement process once again, and secure 2 in 2029. Finally, mortgage renewals will really help to measure that increased utilization and sustained utilization across the service.
Now finally, I'm sure you've all been waiting for this, but let's talk about some costs. Now the main costs here in terms of the first year will be about a $3.2 million CapEx, and although it's not shown there, we can talk about this verbally, but that large percentage will of course go to hiring that staff. This is the main driver of that cost. So we forecasted about $80,000 salary on average, but that's looking at 40 employees hired, both a mix of existing staff being transferred and new employees. Those other costs include the integration of that new AI support system, as well as the necessary policy frameworks that need to be put in place to standardize those procedures.
Now, revenues will come from three main drivers. First, your implementation as you onboard these new clients. Secondly, the origination fees that happen as they are able to establish new mortgages. And thirdly, the aftermarket services as they utilize the service going forward. And we assumed that each of these banks would have about $1 billion in assets on the mortgage side, as well as an 8% take rate on those new mortgages that you would be receiving in revenue, resulting in a $29.6 million 5-year NPV.
Now, once again, you've asked us here with your help with a few key objectives. And through scaling with financial institutions, we believe we can help you build trust in the Canadian lending industry. Thank you so much for your time, and we are now open to any questions that you may have.
The presentation is up, thank you. We will now begin the question and answer period. Friendly reminder, judges, the Q&A period will only be for 10 minutes long. And it will start out the first question.
So I have a question. You spoke about employee engagement and that you actually are willing to invest more in employee touch points. How are you going to measure that employee engagement to actually then determine the investment to be made?
Yeah, just to clarify specifically with those financial institutions we're working with.
Yes.
Yeah, I can start that off. So in terms of metrics to measure that, we'd probably looking at sending out either some sort of client satisfaction survey. This might be tricky given, the scale of those employees and what their focuses are. So we'd likely target their upper management to essentially oversee that, because naturally we can only be in so many locations at once. So that would likely look like sending those satisfaction surveys to the management level, which can then go to their employees, see how they're interacting with the service, and ensure that it's actually making their job more efficient, therefore allowing us to reassess what needs to be worked on more and where they need more support and touch points from our team.
And in terms of metrics in specific, you could look at your Net Promoter Score, which would really see how satisfied the client is with the service, but then also revenue that you are getting as a percentage of those mortgages will really help to measure that utilization, that makes sure that those employees are actually administering mortgages through your service.
You mentioned the real estate forums. How would you do anything with those real estate forums? You had mentioned the Toronto Real Estate Forum. What was your thought you mentioned it. Would you send people there, or would you do the conference?
Thank you. So we would plan to send a few people from the Nesto Cloud team to be able to attend some of these conferences and these forums. The key reason why we believe this is so critical is because there are a lot of different decision makers at those larger financial institutions that do attend these different types of conferences. So again, relationship building is so critical to the B2B sales process. So we believe that by sending some of your key individuals and employees to these conferences, this will allow you to form those connections to be able to help that sales process along.
If I can go ahead. Is it that you want? I'm just going to add to that question. So I understand that's part of the outbound marketing, so it's conference oriented. What about for existing relationships? How do you attempt to activate this portion?
Yeah, I can start that off, absolutely. So again, the critical thing here, and what we see in a lot of these spaces that are very technologically driven, is that warm referral system that's always going to dominate the space in terms of interest in the actual software, especially when it changes essentially how all the employees operate. So to your question, we essentially want to just make sure that those warm referrals are looked at both through the existing and former relationships, and then that's going to be our priority number one in terms of who we try to expand with. So ultimately you'd have to look kind of internally to see where you have those connections, and in terms of the medium to actually reach them, we'd again look at simple things like email outreach to try to set up a quick 15 to 20 minute call, and it's during those calls you're actually going to show them that live demo walkthrough with sample data. Because as our statistic, I believe it was 87% 87% of clients want to see how that system actually works, and then they can imagine how it would integrate in their own system. Because again, it's a software service platform, and it has to integrate directly into their day-to-day operations.
Yeah, my question was along the partnership, the strategic partnership. Are you looking at a specific effort you want to put towards this strategy? Is there a number of, like you mentioned, warm lead or referral to get through this? I'm just curious to expand a little bit more on that.
Yeah, just to clarify, are you specifically looking at kind of what that process looks like, kind of from the warm referrals, or?
I'm looking at the slide just to I think it's the 20.
Oh, sorry. No, over here.
22 here?
Back where we started.
Is it back to our kind of our initial pillar, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
So above that one here, just understand in terms of effort how much you want to invest in the strategic partnership, what you're hoping to leverage out of those. Aside from leads, is there a KPI you're looking at to see if it's a valuable effort? Just trying to understand a little bit more your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just to clarify for this, we envision these strategic partnerships as a basis of establishing trust. So it's not necessarily putting a huge investment into our existing strategic partnerships because we've already done that. We are well versed in maintaining a relationship with them, but it's highlighting that relationship with these established financial institutions to build credibility when we go out and look to establish a presence in the big banks.
Regarding revenue, so I saw here that you have an 8% rate that, so can you walk me through a little bit on how you plan to get revenue?
Yeah, so that 8% rate is an 8% that we take as a take rate as the client uses and administers mortgages through the cloud service. So that's just based on that $1 billion mortgage in holdings that the bank would have. And then kind of looking at what you currently have in industry standards, we kind of looked at that as part of those origination fees as well as the aftermarket services that you provide as those mortgages are either established or renewed.
And so that would be a flat take rate no matter who the client is, whether it's traditional institutions or other tiers?
We model that after your residential.
Okay.
How would you build your demos? So you're talking about 15 to 30 minute demos. How do you build those?
Yeah, so I can start off with this question. For the demos, we'd like to evaluate and essentially utilize our existing data as we believe that we understand the industry better than anyone else. And I think that's something that's essentially the moat of your organization, and it's using this industry data to highlight specific use cases that would be applicable for these financial institutions. Specifically with these demos, we plan to target some of the more respected and senior members of your organization to lead and essentially create that trust with potential clients.
And the exciting part about this is that really who's leading these demos are the people on your team who are behind the development of that AI and the development behind those features. These are the people who are excited to show it off. They want to show these clients, look what we can do for your company. And so that's naturally what we want to leverage is the warm connections in combination with the passionate people who put all of that work into developing these and testing these systems as well. All of these AI systems have gone through tremendous amounts of testing to make sure they deliver the output you want. And this is something you should leverage and convey to those potential clients.
How would you do the support bot? Talking about a support bot. How would you do that? How would that work?
Yeah, it's essentially just going to be somewhat of an add-on to your current product offerings. Again, so back to the value chain, we look at that being as simple as a small, top of the screen type of box that you can interact with, which is primarily going to be used not during the implementation process, but during that initial setup process. So again, as you have bankers and staff from these financial institutions who need to get familiar with how this system works, they can ask that support bot, and if that support bot doesn't work, we have that center of excellence on the phone ready to support them in any issues that the client support bot can't help them with. So it just acts again as that frontline support, adds a little bit of security, and it already integrates nicely with your existing data layer and APIs because your current AI is going to use the same type of information and the same type of compliance as this would.
We have time for one more question if you like.
Maybe into the rollout plan. So what do you think in that rollout plan would be one of your key points to watch for? Is there something, one of your assumptions here that on slide 34, is there an assumption here of something of critical path that needs to be done before another activity starts and you're monitoring? So something that must happen before something else can start?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's two key points we'd like to highlight here. Just very quickly, one, establishing the team, making sure that we are all integrated on board, forming those relationships. Can't start the relationships until you form the team. And the second one here is employee adoption. The employees must be willing and be able to use these tools before the employer can start to see those benefits.
And so is there a risk mitigation plan for that? If users are not complying, they're being resistant?
Yeah, absolutely. That's that kind of key one here with that engagement among employees not adapting to the technology. And that was back to that point on having more touch points and looking at, again, their reaction to the manager incentives. And if those employees aren't utilizing AI, we need to reestablish why that is and allow that for that additional support going forward.
Perfect. The question and answer period is up. Thank you, delegates and judges, for your participation. I will ask everyone to leave the room so we can start preparing for the next presentation.
Thank you so much for your
Leave this
time.
with you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Good job. Good job.
refill on water.
All good, thank you so
All good.
much.
I'll get my oatmeal latte.
Once it's done, you're like, I'm ready to go.
Long espresso.
Yeah.
I'll take a drink.
I wish, I'm just saying, I wish I had my bartender kit.
Actually, spot, yeah.
Just a straight vodka on rocks.
That would work. Sounds perfect.
We'll have to get at the Wednesday night. We'll get our, oh no. Oh. Is the audience still on?
Looks so sunny, it's so cool out.
Yeah, it's insane. It was brisky this morning. Minus 21, I think.
Yeah, definitely more than risky. Whenever the sky is this bright, you know, it's dark.
Yeah, you know it's gonna be freezing outside. Exactly.
Man, tomorrow's zero.
Yeah, it seems.
Zero, 4, 0.
It's gonna be nice until
Whole
the
week.
rest of the week.
Oh, yeah.
It's rain on Saturday.
It's gonna be 20 degrees in April.
That's way too far out.
Don't jinx us just yet. You know Montreal.
We got a snowstorm there.
Please test the clicker. Perfect. Hello, my name is Dinu. I will be your timekeeper for today. Before we continue, I would just like to confirm that this is Team D. Perfect. I will show you warning signs that there are 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, and 30 seconds remaining. Once the 10-second countdown is up, I will say stop, after which the team must stop talking immediately. Afterwards, a 10-minute question and answer period will follow. I would like to remind you that all teams must present for a minimum of 15 minutes, and all team members must speak during the presentation, but not necessarily during the Q&A period. Audience members, we ask that you please place your phones on silent mode and remain seated in the room for the duration of the full presentation and Q&A period. I will now let the judges introduce themselves. Once they are done, you may begin your presentation and the timer will start. Judges?
Hi, Teresa Malawani, Vice President, Head of Tax Planning, my goodness, Wealth Planning and Tax Consulting and Regions.
Jennifer Felicia, I'm the Senior Change Management Consultant at Guardian Taxes.
And George Rudeau, Senior Director, Commercial Division of Royal LePage, Wisconsin.
Good afternoon, my name is Laurence Martin. I'm the Marketing Manager for Growth Strategy Canada.
The presentation will start at your first word.
I have a cousin back home called Harry, and one of the biggest hopes for him is to get his new house. However, one of the biggest fears for him is how he's going to manage the mortgage. However, we think that Nesto Cloud is well positioned to be the bridge between both mortgagors as well as borrowers like my cousin Harry.
Good afternoon, panel. My name is Reagan, and together with my teammates Jared, Anu, and Natalie, we are Victoria Partners, and we are excited to share with you our case for today. So you have asked us, how can Nesto Cloud actually scale their digital platform to enable more Canadians to finance their homes? And our team have come up with two exciting strategies to ultimately help you scale your platform, garnering 715,000 customers by 2030.
Now, we see that you have been successful in creating a leading, fully integrated digital lending platform, and this is attributed to your strong end-to-end LOS as well as POS offerings driven by your AI-first positioning. Now, in terms of looking into lending in the future, we see that externally, the mortgage industry is ramping up, with an influx of mortgage renewals, as 65% of Canadian mortgages are expected to be renewed this year or next year. and an increased pace of digital regulatory change, such as the open banking regulation to standardize APIs. And we see that because of these two things, now many traditional banks are starting to conduct M&As in order to start becoming more competitive. And we see that speed is the key for the next stage of lending growth.
And to scale this platform, it is critical that we form partnerships. But before we form our first partnerships, it is important for us to answer some questions, such as which lenders are the best to target, and how can Nesto best position these target customers compared to their competitors. And finally, what are their key pain points throughout the sales and post-sales cycle to ultimately be the ideal partner for these banks.
Now, we have done a comparative analysis of lenders that you can choose for your next stages of growth, namely traditional banks, credit unions, alternative lenders, as well as fintechs. Now, we've evaluated them across three main evaluation criteria: market attractiveness, a need for an LOS or POS system, as well as loan risk. And we see that for traditional banks, they are the most attractive to target on both market attractiveness as well as product market fit. So we see that this has the highest market size of 65% of mortgage originations in 2025, and they also have the highest need for an LOS or POS system, and you are best positioned to target them. So we see that it's easier for you to integrate all of the large volumes of data, as well as legacy systems that traditional banks have compared to the rest of the financial institutions, and this can be facilitated by your strong API usage. And lastly, we see that in terms of risk, we see that strict know your customer bank processes lead to lower loan defaults. Hence, we have decided to target traditional banks as the first frontier before targeting credit unions subsequently. And now, we see that you also sufficiently address the build-buy argument for traditional banks as well, and you must differentiate on speed as well as regulatory expertise. Now, looking at the build versus buy argument, there are three main things that traditional banks will consider when looking at this evaluation. Firstly, control. Secondly, speed. And lastly, cost. We see that for control, while control is highest when they build it themselves internally, we see that this is actually still addressed by Nesto Cloud, as you offer integration services for extensive customization, which still allows for a high degree of control. Secondly, and most importantly, speed at which the technology platforms can go live. We see that you have better expertise in building and maintaining an LOS or POS for loan management, which leads to higher speed. And it's important to prioritize speed to capture the 2025 and 2026 mortgage market. And lastly, for costs involved with implementing and sustaining the platform, we see that due to the numerous regulatory changes, we see that the technology needs to change accordingly, and we see that Nesto Cloud is best positioned to do this compared to building your own internal systems.
And before capturing this rising market, it is important to first acknowledge that we are not the only mortgage tech company within this system itself. Similarly, there are various competitors, and each company are similar in terms of end-to-end mortgage cycles, as well as other API-driven technology. However, where Nesto Cloud stands out and will win the competitors is in terms of the high platform speed, as well as strong understanding of the Canadian regulations that will enable our partners to have an edge.
Now, we see that we've also done a comparative analysis of your sales as well as post-sales cycle, and we see that we prioritize them based on the chances of success. So we see that for head of mortgage discussions, there are a high chance of success, as HOMs currently want to evaluate loan management technology options as well as the build and buy opportunities. So they will usually issue RFPs quite willingly in order for them to explore their options. And secondly, for the request for proposal stage, we see that there's a high chance of success, as the HOMs are already partially convinced of Nesto Cloud's value during the discussions and are willing to pass the proposal to demonstrations so that they can have a deeper dive into the technology system.
And where are the drop-offs for most competitors within this area would be the deep dives and demonstration, where there's a lower chance for success, where current demonstrations focus on technical deep dives and are less focused in the buy-ins for non-tech stakeholders. Secondly, there's also post-sales support, where there's a lower chance for success because of post-sales support like management, that co-marketing is not yet fully established due to emphasis on the origination itself. And so for Nesto to win, our team strongly believes that you must focus on improving demonstrations by better understanding buy-ins for non-tech KAH and operations and compliance cases themselves.
Now, this leads us to our first key issue. How can Nesto Cloud best optimize its internal structure to convince key tech operations as well as compliance heads during the deep dive? And now, looking at the driving forces for the post-sale cycle, we see that we need to drive internal adoption through empowering employees. And we see that our current strategies to encourage employee adoption would firstly be general trainings, which are conducted at a group level to multiple working level stakeholders. And secondly, we see that you also offer a helpline for specific issue resolution. However, in order for you to truly make everyone adopt the new platform, we see that you must account for different use cases for stakeholders such as underwriters as well as admin staff, instead of offering something that is more higher level. And secondly, we see that you also need to drive external adoption by educating consumers. Now, introducing our customer, homeowner Harry, who is a new customer and he's trying to find a new mortgage, and he's also a millennial. We see that he has 4 main key purchasing criteria. Firstly, interest rates. Secondly, convenience. Thirdly, speed. And lastly, transparency. We see that interest rates and convenience will be roughly similar through any bank that onboards a mortgage technology system, because their interest rates are roughly similar, and for convenience, most of the other technology platforms already offer end-to-end service management. However, where Nesto Cloud can differentiate yourself with co-marketing opportunities with the banks would be in terms of speed with your AI-driven technology, as well as transparency. And these are the 2 areas that we want to focus on.
And this leads us to our second key issue of how can Nesto drive post-sales adoption by driving customer adoption and internal employee adoption.
And with that, we're excited to bring you our strategy, Reconfiguring Nesto, where we will adopt a double-pronged approach, with the first prong focusing on attaining the buy-in of upper management of our clients by creating cross-functional teams within Nesto Cloud in order to deliver more comprehensive demonstrations that feasibly target more stakeholders. And secondly, with our second prong at the working level, where we'll be expanding our implementation team on Nesto Cloud side to include a change management arm to facilitate the transition to Nesto Cloud.
Now let us first dive into our top part of the funnel, which is your upper management. So we can see that currently the demonstration and deep dives of stage focus heavily on the technical and regulatory angle, and other pain points are not well resolved.
So if we look at how it is status quo, we see that technology teams, they need to assess the platform's technical viability and integration readiness. The risk and compliance team from the bank's end, they need to review security posture and regulatory alignment. And for the operations stakeholders, they need to understand how it addresses operational pain points and efficiency gains. And the Nesto Cloud stakeholders involved in this case would be the tech team from Nesto Cloud, the security team, as well as the delivery and product team.
However, what our team thinks is that actually within this demonstration stage, there is actually so much potential to deliver more value that goes beyond your technical as well as your compliance sides. There are other pain points that you can resolve. Firstly, your friction associated with changing partners. So existing banks might actually find it hard to implement Nesto Cloud to its current legacy systems and might question whether this implementation will actually be operationally feasible for them. Moving on, there are also barriers in terms of teaching the working level within these banks itself of how to integrate these AI platforms and how to use it efficiently. And if we look at the other pain point that there possibly can be, will be to gain the partners' trust in implementing your Nesto Cloud AI. So the lack of trust with potential partners due to the perception that the AI solutions might not be compliant with their current regulatory environment within the country itself.
So we see that these pain points are multifaceted, and for that we need a multifunctional team to address them. So hence, we present to you our idea of ACE teams, cross-functional teams which will streamline communication and innovation, which are key in creating a holistic Nesto Cloud demonstration. So what we have is our ACE teams that stands for Agile Organizational Shift, Cultural Transformation, and Effective Demonstrations. So what we see in status quo is that the organization works in silos. You have the security, engineering, and tech team who are mainly involved in these demonstrations, but they work in silos separate from one another, which means that only certain technical aspects of Nesto Cloud is being pitched during the demonstration stage of the sales funnel.
But we can see that there are actually so many more different teams that Nesto Cloud has, and we feel like it is important for you to actually leverage these teams during your demonstration stage itself through a cross-functional team structures where your product, your security, delivery, tech, and engineering team all work in tandem to create a narrative that would be the best for your clients.
So the cross-functional team will offer a collaborative approach which ensures that demos are technically accurate, user-friendly, and aligned with business goals. So the overarching vision of these ACE teams is to allow demonstrations to showcase Nesto Cloud's full end-to-end capabilities rather than just isolated features.
Now, in terms of the outcomes that you can possibly see with this cross-collaboration is firstly having this faster real-time resolutions. Now, we understand that during the demonstration stage itself, questions that might be posed to Nesto Cloud might not only be the technical or compliance questions, there might be issues or questions revolving around maybe consumer or user experiences. And with these cross-functional teams, all of these questions can actually be effectively resolved. And if we move on to the second point of what the outcome can possibly be, there will be an improved user experience focus as the team can actually then effectively demonstrate the platform both from the brokers as well as the consumer's perspective, highlighting the best-in-class user experience for both of these users. Now, in terms of the implementation details of this cross-functional team, what will actually be happening would be that the vice presidents of the different teams in Nesto Cloud would then appoint which employees within their teams would be appointed to a specific sales lead, which would then generate this cross-functional team.
So the ACE team will hence transform the demonstration from a simple product walkthrough into a strategic, convincing presentation of a comprehensive, modern, AI-driven mortgage ecosystem.
Now, this would create a win-win situations for your clients, such as Scotiabank, as well as for the company Nesto Cloud. Now, in terms of your clients like Scotiabank, they would then be able to implement a digital lending platform that will help increase the transparency within the industry, as well as have increased AI capabilities within their company. And in terms of Nesto Clouds, they are then able to leverage this cross-functional team to operate more efficiently and increase the number of banks that they are able to sell their solutions to.
And with that, we move to the second prong of our solution, reconfiguring Nesto, where we are now targeting the working level now that we've attained upper management buy-in. Now we want to expand our implementation team to tackle the issue of change management.
Now, Nesto Cloud can actually take inspiration from a company called Teamers and create a change management team that will ease the transition of its clients. Now, you might be wondering what Teamers is or what exactly does it do. Teamers is actually a Singaporean firm that provides digital transformation solutions for the public and private sector. Now, within this company itself, they actually have a dedicated team that includes a change management arm. Now, clients would then first give a list of all of their stakeholders within the organizations that will be impacted by these new solutions. Then this change management team within Teamers would then take the time to understand who are all of these different stakeholders, what are their buy-ins, or what are the pain points that they might face. The team would then create certain SOPs for these stakeholders to actually follow up post-implementation for a more effective implementation and use of the solutions.
So Nesto Cloud can actually take inspiration from Teamers over here and expand their implementation team to include a change management team, which will help each financial institution facilitate the transition for staff at every operational level of the organization.
Now, the change management team will personally work with all of Nesto Cloud's clients in order to understand the ins and outs of the organizations as well as the different people working within it. Now, in terms of the roles of the change management teams, firstly, they will work with the financial institutions to understand how its departments are organized and the key elements of the organizational structure.
Then it will sit down with the working level staff to understand how their roles will change with the introduction of Nesto Cloud. Then it will create SOPs and customized training materials for the different departments, for example, the underwriters and the administrative staff, in order to facilitate the integration of Nesto Cloud. So as for the duration of how long this change management team will be attached to the client, the team will provide hands-on support to the client for a duration of 3 months and will be available if needed thereafter.
Now, Nesto Cloud will co-market this with its clients on every platform to ensure end-to-end consumers are able to interact with their clients. So we can see on the screen an example of the co-marketing that can be done potentially with Scotiabank. And you can see at the bottom of the flyer, it would specifically outline that this would be powered by Nesto Cloud. Now, in terms of the key selling points that will be driven, that will be shown during this co-marketing, would definitely first be its speed, showing that Nesto Cloud will actually enable for faster processing times of mortgages.
Another key selling point we want to draw focus to in this co-marketing campaign is the transparency. So under Nesto Cloud, the credit score of our customers actually directly relates to the offered solution under our algorithm. And for that reason, consumers will feel confident that they know exactly why they are being offered a mortgage at the rate they are being offered at. As for the channels that we are utilizing for the co-marketing, Nesto Cloud will be co-branding with its clients on every channel that end consumers interact with its clients on. For example, Google, social media, website, within the app of Scotiabank, etc.
Now, ultimately, with this two-pronged approach and solution, we are able to first target the top level of C-suite executives, as well as the working level employees within the banks itself.
And now let's move on to our financial impact, where we show you how our strategies will help you to expand your portfolio.
Our implementation timeline will ensure that our proposed strategies will be ready for launch by Q4 2026, with key steps lying in organizing the team as well as training the team.
And now we see that we've identified a bunch of risks, and we see that all of them will be well mitigated, and we're more than happy to go through this during Q&A.
Overall, with our proposed strategies, Nesto Cloud will be able to serve an additional 215,000 customers in the next 5 years. This growth is mainly driven by the increased number of customers served due to the targeted outreach campaigns from banks and other lenders, as well as improved conversion of the HOMs from the formation of the ACE team itself.
And a few other assumptions that we used was 8,200 mortgages approved annually with a take rate of 0.25% at the industry average. And in terms of mortgage servicing, we see that there's a 15% of take rate where revenue is assumed based on historicals.
And overall, key costs are assumed based on industry benchmarks, where we will spend mainly on salaries as well as aggressive marketing.
And now, let's go back to my cousin back home, Harry. We see that with our strategies, Nesto Cloud will be able to serve as the bridge between banks where they increase bank efficiency and speed, as well as transparency, and they will also be able to bridge them towards homeowners such as Harry in order to have mortgages be accessible to all Canadians. Thank you.
Perfect. The presentation is up. Thank you. We will now begin the question and answer period. Friendly reminder, judges, the Q&A period will only be 10 minutes long. It will begin as soon as you ask your first question.
So my first question relates to risk and mitigation. There was a beautiful slide with a bunch of information on there, and I'd love for you to kind of give me an overview in the next minute or so.
Right, so to overall walk through the risk and mitigations, mainly when third-party software companies actually partner with banks, the main risk that actually could come in would be the misalignment between such as data, especially data encryption itself. So we believe a key mitigation would then to be enhance the SOPs in place in case of breaches. Yeah, and the first one is mainly internally is between now that we are establishing a new team, it is crucial that the pre-sales team and the post-sales team are aligned in terms of what they are selling to the customer and the services that they provide.
Thank you.
I have a question on your ACE team. So if I understand correctly, maybe just clarification, is this team meant to support demo only, or they have another role or responsibility through the sales cycle?
Yeah, so the two main stages where the ACE team would then be prominent in is firstly the RFP, definitely crafting the proposal and creating the buy-ins for all of the different stakeholders within the banks. But most importantly, it would be during the demonstration stage where they will actually have face time with the clients, where they are able to explicitly spell out what are the different buy-ins that their solution can actually provide for the banks itself.
And how are you hoping to generate leads that goes to a demo? What's the effort prior to executing the demo in terms of the sales strategy?
So I think in terms of the sales strategy, usually what will happen within the first two stages will be that, let's say in the HOM stage where you reach out to the head of mortgages, usually this will be done for people who are more senior within the firm. So let's say the founder, let's say the head of sales, who will then reach out to the head of mortgages. And then within the request for proposal stage, this is then done by people who are
relatively like who are more towards the working level, where they do analysis for the company, and then after that they actually create the proposal and submit the proposal. And our ACE team comes in during the deep dive and demonstration, so we really need to sell it and convert these leads.
Maybe it's just a follow-up. So could you walk me through how you attempt to attract these potential clients? Where do you find them? Where do you start? So, you're going to a bank, are you going to the CTO, the CFO, the CEO? Like, who are you targeting?
So in terms of who we would be targeting, I think this, as mentioned in the case, the person that we would be targeting would be the head of mortgage. So this is the key leader that we want to target. However, we do understand that within an actual origination setting, sometimes it may be more accessible to target the CTO instead, sometimes maybe more the CFO instead. So usually what would happen would be that, again, as mentioned before, the head of sales, or let's say the founder, would then end up contacting his initial contacts before they reach out to the head of mortgage.
I think just to add on, we believe that actually the HOM stage would actually already be effectively targeted. If we look at other competitors that are playing in the same space as us, we can see that we actually have this competitive advantage. First, we know very well the Canadian market as well as the regulatory and compliance infrastructure and environment of the Canadian market. And secondly, we are the one that are focusing on this real estate industry. So we believe that these two UVPs will actually help us to create these stronger leads and actually get these HOMs to actually even want to have an RFP with our client, with our company.
And so how do you ensure this mortgage volume? So I saw that you have a very low take rate. I believe it's up 0.25, which is quite low. So could you walk me through how you're going to make money?
Right, so I think this 0.25 take rate is in terms of after each mortgage is about how much actually goes straight into Nesto Cloud itself. So it's not in terms of the market size that's available. So how we ensure that we actually win on volume despite a low take rate, it is because we decide to prioritize who we're actually targeting. So our top priority would then be traditional banks, where most of the Canadians actually go to them for mortgages. And every year there are a few millions of different people filing for mortgages. And we believe this 0.25 take rate actually translates to about 20 to 40 million in terms of pure free cash flow for us every year.
And so are you ensuring the volume is coming in through co-marketing? Is this how you're going to attract traditional banks?
Right, so initially current industry practice is co-marketing in terms of outreach to each individual party that we're trying to pitch to. However, where our value lies is after we pass the co-marketing initial interest phase, where we go into the demonstration phase, our strategies will then increase the conversion from demonstration itself. So this is how we ensure that there's an increased amount of banks actually signing with us. And the second step is because our second strategy lies towards the post-strategies aspect of it, the average mortgage size uptake as well as the generational day-to-day loans and functions of the different consumers will then increase with the partnership with Nesto Cloud itself due to its speed and transparency on the platform.
So how much new staff are you, this says ACE team, three staff. How much new staff are you focusing on for this promotion? Just 3 staff or is more people than that?
Sure. So I can actually maybe talk about the second prong of the strategy first, which is for the expansion of the implementation team to the change management team. So we are assuming that, let's say if we have 5 people in the implementation team currently, we'll be expanding to a team of 8 for 3 extra staff added for per key account in order to have 3 members who are specifically focused on change management.
Yeah, then in terms of the first strategy of your cross-functional teams, the team size would stay exactly the same. So instead of them working in silos, we will then be reshuffling them to work cross-functionally.
Maybe as an add-on then, so you're hoping that there's going to be a cross-alignment. So a siloed is a cultural behavior. How do you account to transfer this siloed way of working into now a cross-collaboration? What would be your first step there to sell on this cross-collaboration?
Yep, so definitely in terms of selling this cross-collaboration, we would then be sending our teams for trainings as well as to get them to work more closely with one another, so having like bonding training sessions where they are able to then understand what are their new roles and responsibilities when it comes to these cross-functional teams, and actually get them to synergize as well as to understand what are the strengths of each team that should be actually brought out and sold during the demonstration phase itself.
Right, and I think a key point to bring up here is we're not trying to completely change their day-to-day tasks and how they pitch, right? So ultimately, when Nesto Cloud actually comes together to form a pitch, it is still these 5 different parties with the same goal, trying to close the client. What we are proposing is that they go above and beyond when working together to align what they are trying to pitch and to answer the client's questions. So we are not trying to change their job scope, but just increase the alignment and synergy between all of them.
I have one question about post-sales service. Just out of curiosity, you mentioned a 3-month period, the duration of this service. My question is, why chose 3 months rather than another timeline, and maybe how the available need help, how will this be processed after? Is it on demand? Is it like, just walk me through the needs of it?
Sure. So as for why exactly we've chosen a 3-month duration, so we've actually benchmarked it to actually tech consulting firms or implementation firms that specialize in digital transformation. And we see that, let's say, taking the example of Teamers from before, they actually also use a period of 3 months in order to facilitate this change management. We understand that it's a multi-level process where we need to maybe sit down with people from the working level to understand how exactly the scope of their work will change, which is why we've accounted for 3 months as well. As for the help provided thereafter, it will be on demand. For example, whenever the client requires any sort of help regarding integrating Nesto Cloud within their organization, they can reach out to Nesto Cloud.
We have time for one more question.
Could we go back to your implementation rollout and you can just, slide 23, and walk me through your strategy 1, it says running. What activities go into that bucket?
Right, so to break this down a little further, when we talk about running, it's in terms of how we actually are going to change and train this team to each different customer that we are trying to secure, right? So this 3 months beta phase would work in terms of when we're trying to reach out to a big bank. So they would then require more time in terms of how they can actually implement this and use this software within their systems itself. However, the running component comes in terms of each different partner you close aren't going to be a big bank, right? They could be different credit unions and different lenders as well. So we believe this running then goes into training different ACE teams to then cater to the needs of each of these different customers to run based on their specific business practices itself. So basically, to sum it all up, running is trying to cater to each customer itself throughout for the next 5 years.
Okay, so you're implementing your strategy to all customers.
Yes.
And it sounds like you're using like a super user strategy, train the trainer, where they're taking the training and
yes.
after 3 months you're gone.
Oof,
what do you do? So what's the strategy there?
Yeah, so we wouldn't be gone after 3 months. So a common thing when it comes to software as a service businesses, especially for skills such as banks, they usually require onboard training from the software company itself to actually train their staff to ensure that everybody is extremely competent in terms of the steps to use this software itself. However, it wouldn't be feasible for our business to then stay there with them every day for the next 3 months, right? So after 3 months, it goes back to the default of consistent 24/7 hotline support and annual trainings itself. So these 3 months are an additional step to ensure that these banks actually feel safe and reduce the friction of onboarding our product itself, as they feel that their employees would be competent enough to run this and sell this to the customers as well.
Perfect, thank you. The question and answer period is up. Thank you, delegates and judges, for your participation. I will ask everyone to leave the room so we can start the deliberation period. Thank you.